Welcome to another lesson in cybersecurity. Introduction to Cybersecurity from Cybersecurity for Everyone. Now you may ask the question, what is cybersecurity? Well, cybersecurity is the practice of protecting systems, networks, and programs from digital attacks. These attacks are usually aimed at accessing, changing, or destroying sensitive information, extorting money from users, or interrupting normal business processes. Hackers are trying to get into your systems and networks right now, whether it's for fun or profit. Now, these could be novice hackers who are looking for a shortcut to fame, or a group of organized criminals who work silently on the wire. These people don't make noise, but when their job is done, a business may be damaged beyond repair. By understanding cybersecurity, you can protect the organization's ability to function. It enables the safe operation of applications implemented on the organization's IT systems. It protects the data the organization uses and collects, and safeguards the technology assets in use. Hackers can use botnets, distributed denial of service, hacking, malware, phishing, pharming, ransomware, and even spam. These are all threats. So for cybersecurity, there's always the need for security defense in depth. For example, let's look at a castle. A castle has different layers. This is how we can interpret the different levels that we would implement to protect an organization from cybersecurity threats. There is the physical. This is where you'd have your policies, your procedures, and awareness. This determines who comes into your organization, when, what time, what level of access they might have. It also determines other things like your physical layers, what type of guards, guardrails, doors, what can actually physically block people from coming or becoming threat actors on your property. CCTV cameras, for example, can actually view, track, and log these activities. We also have your perimeter, which is overseeing what's happening. Again, this includes things like intrusion devices that are going to track different activities in your organization when it's happening. It's going to view everything going in and actually going out. It's going to protect your internal network. Let's look at the host. That's your data center, where all of your data is being held. It could be just your laptop, it could be a server, but it's the key area where your data is being stored. In some cases, it's actually the cloud environment. And then we have the application. For example, you could be using QuickBooks, a social media application, a business application, a human resource application. We need to make sure that that is protected with special tools. And then we have what are called your data, which is your crown jewels. Now, crown jewels may differ from organizations to organizations. It could be a special menu or formula for a drink. It could be a code that a bank uses. It could be the personal data from a hospital or a medical compliance store or a regulatory agency. Crown jewels differ from organizations to organizations, depending on the type of risk. And there's always the dreaded risk of a breach. So by putting together these different levels of defense in depth, we can always try to protect the crown jewels in an organization. So let's take a look at how we can help to protect an organization through the use of policies and standards. We live in an interconnected world where individuals as well as collective actions have the potential to result in inspiring goodness or tragic harm. The objective of information security is to protect each of us, our economy, our critical infrastructure, and our country from the harm that can result from inadvertent or intentional misuse, compromise, or destruction of information and information systems. The services provided by critical infrastructure sectors are the backbone of our nation's economy. Critical infrastructure are the assets, systems, and networks, whether physical or virtual. So what is a policy? The role of a policy is to provide direction and structure. Policies are at the foundation of companies' operations. The impact of a policy can be positive or negative. The hallmark of a positive policy is one that supports endeavors, responds to a changing environment, and potentially creates a better world. The role of a policy is to codify the guiding principles, shape behavior, and provide guidance to those who are tasked with making present and future decisions. An information security policy is a directive that defines how the organization is going to protect its information assets and information systems and ensure compliance with legal and regulatory requirements. The objective of an information security policy and corresponding program is to protect the organization, its employees, its customers, and also vendors and partners from damage resulting from intentional or accidental damage, misuse, or disclosure of information. It can also protect the integrity of the information. So an information security policy is considered a document that states how an organization plans to protect its tangible and intangible information assets. The components of an information security policy include an acceptable internet use policy, a non-disclosure agreement, password policies, and backup policies. What is an information asset? Any information item, regardless of storage format, that represents value to the organization is considered an information asset. We can always view tangible versus intangible information assets. Tangible information assets are assets that are physical in nature that can be touched. That includes things like your facilities, hardware, and software. Intangible information assets are defined as the business critical body of information a company requires to conduct business. This includes things like your reputation, intellectual property, intellectual capital. The goal of information security policies is to protect the information which results in the protection of the company's partners, and its clients. The successful policy characteristics include things that must be done and how it must be done, but not how to do it. A good policy has the following 7 characteristics. It is endorsed, it's relevant, it's realistic, it's attainable, adaptable, enforceable, and also inclusive. Policies must be realistic. They must consider the situation as follows. Company A discovers that users are writing down their passwords on sticky notes and putting the sticky notes on the underside of their keyboard. This is often discovered because multiple users share the same workstation. In response, management decides to implement a policy that prohibits employees from writing down their passwords. Leadership needs to understand why employees were writing down their passwords, make employees aware of the dangers of writing down their passwords, and provide alternative strategies or aids to remember their passwords. Attainable means that policies should only require what is possible. If we assume that the objective of a policy is to advance the organization's guiding principles, one can also assume that a positive outcome is desired. A policy should never set up constituents for failure, rather it should provide a clear path for success. Adaptable means in order to thrive and grow, a business must be open to changes in the market and willing to take measured risk. An adaptable information security policy will recognize that information security is not static. Cybersecurity is the practice of protecting systems, networks, and programs from digital attacks. These attacks are usually aimed at accessing, changing, or destroying sensitive information, such as extorting money from users or interrupting normal business processes. Enforceable means that administrative, physical, or technical controls can be put in place to support the policy. That compliance can be measured, and if necessary, appropriate sanctions are applied. If a rule is broken and there is no consequence, then the rule is in effect meaningless. To be inclusive means that we must include external parties in our policy throughout the process. Organizations used to be concerned only about what was happening internally, but that is no longer the case. Policies must be designed in such a way to incorporate third parties. The policies must look at the risk that these third parties face. Hacktivism is done in the name of cybercrime, terrorism, and warfare. An information security policy must take into account organizational objectives, international law, the cultural norms of its employees, business partners, suppliers, and customers, the environmental impact, and global cyber threats. When complying with government policies, we must understand that it's the responsibility of all of the organization to understand what federal mandates they may fall under. For example, in the United States, there's HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. And there's also the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, which defines a consumer as an individual who obtains from a financial institution financial products. Regardless of whether a policy is based on guiding principles of regulatory requirements, its success depends in large part upon how the organization approaches the task of policy development, publication, adoption, and review. The responsibilities associated with the policy life cycle are distributed throughout an organization. Organizations that understand the life cycle and take a structured approach will have a much better chance of success. The objective of this section is to introduce you to the components that make up the policy lifecycle. The information security policy lifecycle includes sections such as develop, publish, adopt, and review. A lack of policy enforcement leads to a loss of credibility. Behavioral policies. We should maintain consistency and fairness in enforcing policies, and technical policies use built-in and third-party solutions. The primary task should identify the need for and context of the policy. Policies should never be developed for their own sake. There should always be a reason. Policies should support and be in agreement with relevant laws, obligations, and customs. The research task focuses on defining operational, legal, and regulatory or contractual requirements. Policies must be written for their intended audience. Policies require scrutiny. Because information security policies affect an entire organization, they are inherently cross-departmental. The objective of the communication task is to deliver the message that the policy or policies are important to the organization. In order to accomplish this task, visible leadership is required. Disseminating the policy simply means making it available. Policies should be widely distributed and available to their intended audience. Multiple factors contribute to an individual's decision to comply with a rule, policy, or law, including the chance of being caught, the reward for taking the risk, and the consequences. A security policy is a description of specific technologies used in the field of information security. An information security policy requires that communications test equipment be controlled so the equipment can be used to browse information passing on a network. A formal description of a security policy is an access control model. A definition of the particular settings that have been determined to provide optimum security defines the intent of a system security policy. Gaining management approval is the first step that should be taken when developing an information security policy. The responsibilities of individuals and groups for protected information should not be contained within a computer policy. Who is to do it? Is not a fundamental component of a regulatory security policy. Regulatory security policies are mandated to the organization, but it is up to them to implement it. Management controls that are instituted to implement a security policy can be administrative, procedural, or technical. A security policy would include background, order requirements, and enforcement. Identifying major functional areas of information is an important characteristic of an information security policy. The adoption of a corporate information security policy statement would be the first step in establishing an information security program. Business operation managers would be best suited to oversee the development of an information security policy. The function of a corporate information security policy is to define the main security objectives which must be achieved and the security framework to meet its business objectives. Senior management must endorse a security policy so that they will accept ownership for security within the organization. This has been Introduction to Cybersecurity. My name is Chris Nelson. Please click and like and share. Cybersecurity for everyone.